Alright, welcome back to Mr. Excalibur. My name is Arthur, and today we're doing something very different. About a year or so ago, I came out with a video on this sword from Dragon King called the Winter Sun. And recently, I bought another one. I had actually sold off the one in the video that I made some time ago in effort to look at more models and more designs of katanas. And recently, about the time when I'm filming this, I got kind of homesick for this sword. So I actually looked up on Buy the Sword and found one. They had one for a very reasonable price, and I went ahead and bought it. So there's an interesting story behind this. I looked at the video that I did previous, and to make a long story short, I didn't like how it looked now, having done a lot more of these sometime later. And there are some interesting little factoids that have come out about this sword since I put out that video now about a year or so ago, going on actually 2 years. And so I decided to completely remake this video. I have taken down the previous one, and we've now replaced it with this one. This is a Winter Sun Katana from Dragon King. And unlike the one that I got about 2 years ago, this one is phenomenal. Let's take a look at it. This sword is about one of the most fun swords I've ever had to cut with, and I just love it. But then again, for those of you who don't know, and maybe I haven't expressed this enough, I actually like swords that are, I suppose there's a couple ways to put this. You can call them mono-timbered. You can also call them spring-timbered, through-timbered. Point is, you don't have a home own line, or if you did, it would be artificial. It wouldn't be real. And that's because this is a mono-timbered spring steel blade. And I really like them. As opposed to the first one I got, number one, this is sharp, literally from the Hobaki all the way to the Kasaki. Unlike the first one I got, no wood shavings coming out of the side when I drew it and put it back into the side. No loose parts. However, there have been some changes in this design, and I'm going to go into that a little bit more in the video footage, so I'm not going to go into it here, but there are some important things about the dimensions of this sword that I think are really important for potential buyers to know. Some design aspects of it, and some potential, I guess you could say, changes that have occurred with this sword just in the time that I bought the first one, sold it, and then bought this one. And I bought this one in, let's see, December of 2021. So that is my reference. What I've got in this video are the reviews by KatanaFanboy and Matt Jensen, who did both their reviews some time ago. And unlike the original version of this video, I have simply summarized what both of those reviewers said about this sword instead of simply splicing that in. I've learned that it's better that I put a lot of my own content when I include other people's footage. So that was my bad years ago when I did this the first time around. It's another reason why I'm putting this review out yet again. And most importantly, I would say, I just really love this thing. This sword is a lot of fun. It's a longer katana, and I'm a longer guy, so it works. I guess we'll get more into it as the rest of the footage rolls on. We've got some unpacking footage as usual, and a lot of cutting footage, both from the original video that I put out and some new. And then of course the other, some recaps of the reviews that have been previously done that I mentioned before. So I hope all this will be informative for you, and I hope you enjoy. Please subscribe, and we will see you next time. Bye for now. This is the unboxing footage of the Dragon King Winter Sun Katana. And one of the interesting things that Dragon King as well as Hanwei always put on their boxes is this entertaining warning label. Warning, this product is very sharp. Well, in this case, it really was. Now, the packing was very similar to the first one of these that I got, where they've got the sword wrapped up in a sword bag, then in a plastic bag, and then you have these styrofoam spacers that cushion it from the outside. So that's right from the factory. And it's always good to see that they're really taking their time with packing it that way. And here's a closer look of the sword just in the bag. Immediately I could tell this one was a little different. Something that we're going to go over when looking at some of the previous reviews of this sword is that there's a lot of variability in the size and length stats of this sword for some reason. Don't really know why, but that is the case. The Fushi and Kushira on this sword are rather plain, but they do go with a very straightforward furniture that has been put on this sword. This one came with actually a very nice Sageo cord. It was much thicker and heavier than the first one I got. Right away when taking the sword out, I was reminded of how well balanced this sword is, especially for one as long as this is. And that is a nice thing going into a longer katana. One of the things I noticed right off was how sharp this was right out of the box. And apparently, Dragon King swords tend to be very well sharpened right out of the box. And that's always also a good thing as well. Well balanced, all the pieces very nicely fit, sharp sword. Here's a closer up look of the Dragon King Winter's Sun Katana. One of the interesting things that both this one and the first one I got didn't have was that snowflake decal on the Tsuba. Apparently, that is a feature that has been removed from this design by Dragon King. Don't really know why, but there were a number of people who had gotten it previous to this point who also noticed that detail had been removed. Matt Jensen had done a review of this sword a few years ago, and one of the things that he and I actually disagree on is the whole quality of the finish of the sword. I actually like when a sword that does not have a differentially heat treated blade has that very almost utilitarian finish to the edge of the blade. It gives it a very simple, very clean look that I think is actually attractive for me. I actually like it when they're a little bit more honest about what the sword can and can't do. One of the things, though, that Jensen did admit, though, that for the sword's dimensions, a longer blade and handle, the sword was remarkably well balanced. And I agree, it is a very nicely balanced sword. However, one of the things that he assessed was that the sword was very lightly built, and this came after he disassembled it and took a look at the Nakago and the general overall build of the sword. He thought it was a bit lightly built. Therefore, when going into cutting, he was a little nervous as to how it would hold up. Now, he wasn't going to break the sword, but he was going to do a fair amount of cutting with it. And here he is, slicing away at pool noodles and doing a pretty good job at it. One of the things that he mentioned was that the sword definitely does come very well sharpened right out of the box. Now, at this point, Jensen compares the Winter Sun to what are called high-profile cutters or specialized cutters or performance cutters, which are designed specifically for cutting through tatami mats. Personally, if it is doing this good of a job through tatami mats, it means that it can do this reasonably well as being good for Yaido. KatanaFanboy also did a review of this sword, and what's interesting about his review was, at least at the beginning of it, his assessment was that in comparison with what he had seen as earlier Dragon King swords, he thought that the quality of Dragon King has actually declined. He did some modifications to his sword. He dyed the Semigawa wrap. He removed some of the blackening on some of the ironwork pieces of the sword. But to my knowledge, he did not sharpen the sword at all. And as he is doing his tatami mat cutting, his assessment was that for a sword right out of the box, it cut remarkably well. And this seems to be kind of a consensus opinion in that the sword, for its price range, is quite a buy. Is it a differentially heat-treated sword? No. Does it need to be? No. The 5160 blade that Dragon King put on these is remarkably tough and very well sharpened right out of the box. Now, here is where the variation of the sword does come into play. One of the things Matt Jensen mentioned is that there is a great discrepancy between Hanwei, or should say Dragon King's specs on the sword and what he has got, as well as several other people have gotten. There are literally inches of differences between what people have gotten and what they see advertised. Although KatanaFanboy didn't mention any of that, that has been a common comment on the sword. And that is, it may say it only has a 30-inch blade, but it may have as much larger as a 31 to 32-inch blade. My turn cutting. Now, this first couple of minutes here is cutting footage from the original release of the sword, and you will see here over the period of time the transformation of my backyard, and of hopefully beginning a little better in cutting. This sword just was fun. I remember when I got it, it was a lot of fun. It was nice to swing around a slightly larger katana, and I just had a blast with it. I remember it being very well balanced, nice to handle in the hand. A sword that long, even a katana, which tend to be lighter weapons, still was remarkably well balanced and light for a sword that was considerably longer. And right from the very beginning, I get a static cut. So I knew this thing was very sharp. And this, of course, is, these are the heavier juice bottles, which tend to be a lot tougher. And with these milk bottles, I was just able to fillet them into their rings. And when you got a sword that's nice and long like this, with that steady 51-60 blade, you don't have to be quite afraid of possibly hitting your stand or something, because that spring steel is going to be nice and durable. Alright, the next two iterations here are from more recent testing. This is the second of these Winter Sun katanas that I got. And doing a little flip-de-doodly-doo. Not bad. And again, I have to admit that although I couldn't remember it exactly, my impression when I bought this one was that it was longer. Slightly longer blade, longer tsuka. I can't quite put my finger on it, but it feels like a slightly longer sword. However, even with that, just like the first one, it handles beautifully. These are one of those kind of swords that personally I would recommend to someone who is planning on taking up a number of the Japanese sword arts and wants something that is cheap, tough, and very functional, and can mess around with at home and not worry about it breaking. Now, one of the nice things about these other bottles was that, man, it really did show how sharp this thing is. Let's see if I can get another static cut of one of these guys. Nope, not yet. But they did cut through it just remarkably easy. Now I know it'll cut through the milk bottles, but these heavier juice bottles, there we go. Hey, not bad, Mr. Caliber. Not bad at all. One of the things I always have to remember with these heavier bottles is that they do take a little bit more. Hey, one more. Hey, this thing really was fun, guys. So I really put some extra footage in here of cutting with this thing. Basically because it's, I don't know what I can say. It's fun. Here's another generation of footage here. Slightly different camera too. And it was just fun. If you're looking for a fun sword, now I'm going to caveat that by saying this. The sword is a longer katana. Some people have even gone as far as to describe it as an O katana. That I disagree with. O katanas usually have at least a 33-inch blade. These do not. The Winter Sun katanas do not. Now, I'm not discounting that maybe you have gotten one of these guys and gotten one with a long blade. There have been such a discrepancy between the standard stats and what people have gotten, that I have to admit that this thing just cut through bottles like butter. Let's see if I can get another static cut. Bottom didn't even move. I almost felt like I was cheating when using this sword on some of these bottles, that they just wouldn't move. If you get them right, man, this thing makes you feel like a champ. So anyway, to wrap up here, now after a year or so and getting a second version or a second copy of this sword, I can pretty much say, yeah, this thing was a good buy. I will be linking the original footage down below here in the comment section, but I will be taking it down as a publicly viewed video, so you can click on it if you like. My assessment was generally the same, just some interesting updated information on the sword regarding its size, the decals on the sword, the side for this one. Remember, I said that was also feeling a lot better, more solid, heavier even. So anyway, this thing was fun. Make sure you clean it off so you have it to play with again another day.